What's going on, guys? Today we have a project here, the Hylian shield from The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, and it was printed in 9 pieces. It looks like an extra piece here, but what really happened is I ran out of gold filament and then switched filament in mid-print and then continued the print. So this isn't a separate piece, it's one piece. But what's already happened is kind of self-explanatory. I printed each piece separately on my 2 Ender 5s, and hindsight's 20/20, but you can see here that there is this wood grain kind of pattern, and that's because I printed these flat, and the layers, when they built up, just looked like that because it's wider instead of printing it stacked like vertically like I did this one, and you can't see any of the layering like you can on these. But this corner piece was like an experiment. I did only 2 layers, 2 outer shells on this one, and it caused a few little breakthroughs that you can see through the surface. The rest of it is 3 layers. This is all PLA hatchbox filament. So I've got green, silver, blue, gold, basically any little odds and ends I had left on my spools. We have a big piece of cardboard on our kitchen table here, and to hide these imperfections, we've already sanded it some. I'm going to be taking my Dremel and getting rid of some of this glue spillage and a little bit of imperfections where the seams meet. And then we're going to use this glaze coat famo wood that we had left over from where I did my counters. We did concrete countertops, and it just puts a really high gloss finish on top of your counters or projects. So we're going to go ahead and coat it with this, and then after that we'll do some light sanding and probably paint it base coat blue, and then go from there with the silver and the red and the gold and all that. So we'll try to record a little bit of each step all the way until completion here. Basically, I'm just getting anything that's really sticking up pretty high, because when the famo wood gets put on here, it's going to layer it, and after it's painted, you won't be able to see any of these small little rippling details or anything like that. So really all I'm interested in getting with this Dremel is anything that's like majorly sticking up or anything that's poofed up too high. I just want it to have a general kind of same level on the base of the shield here, the bottom of it. And on the decals, I want them to just be crisp and clean where they meet up at. Like here, there's a big glop of glue that needs to come off up here. Places of interest like that need special attention, but other than that, I'm going to hit all these spots with the Dremel here, and then we'll cover it with some of that glaze coat. so we've got our Familwood glaze coat here. We got the side A resin and the side B hardener. And we've already measured out the marks that I need to pour to each. I'm going to be mixing with this paint mixer here. You have to mix this stuff for a continuous 6 minutes before you distribute it to the surface. Earlier I was talking about the difference between this and the XTC 3D. This is a longer work time. You have about 10 to 15 minutes. With XTC 3D, you have, in reality, you have like 5 minutes before it begins to tack up to the point where you can't really paint it as smoothly. So with a project this large, I needed a little bit more work time than the XTC 3D could provide. So we're going to be doing this in small batches, that deep, and it's probably going to take me doing that a few times per layer. You have to wait a certain amount of time between layers, and then you have to wait until it becomes dry to the touch before you can paint it. I'm going to try to do the sides here and the front surface. The back, as you can see, it looks like rough wood. I like that look. And where it's the back of the shield, I'm not as worried about it. I don't want to waste the supplies here on covering the entire back. So we're going to get on with mixing this stuff here in equal parts. So we'll start with side A. Pop a little hole in the top here. We have these foam brushes here to get into all the detail areas when we're painting this stuff on. So we want to bring it to that first line. You want to be pretty precise about it, because if you don't mix it right, it won't harden correctly. Okay, so that was almost the whole thing. So the next one will be a little bit of a smaller batch, but we'll know that we can just pour in what's left and it should equal out to be the same.
Good job, baby.
Okay.
I was gonna make that first.
And so now you want to mix this together for 6 minutes. So we're not going to try to flood the divot areas here. This actually had to be mixed for 12 minutes. I had that wrong. It's 2 6-minute segments of putting them in separate cups and then pouring it into this one, and then 6 more minutes. But I'm going to try to just drizzle it around the best I can and see how it's going to behave. And any pockets that fill in any areas, I'm going to have to force it out with some of those little foam brushes over there. But I'm going to continue to work with this, because you can see it's going to run to the deepest part. I'm going to work with this until it begins to dry. So it'll stay where it needs to stay. It should cover up any imperfections here. And it may take multiple coats, we'll see. It's already about to overflow on the sides there. It's okay if it runs off a little, because we have cardboard under it. This is definitely messy, so make sure your work area is covered. And I'll scoop up what's dripping down and be sure to use it with some of those foam pads, foam brushes. Okay. So now we just want to kind of work it into all the places that it's missed. This isn't a level surface, so it's going to be a bit challenging getting it to cover everywhere correctly. And this is just going to take a lot of little time-consuming effort here to get every little thing covered, but we'll get back with you guys when it's all coated and evened out. Alright guys, so we got a pretty even coat on it. We had a problem with it kind of running to the edges and pulling on these sides here where these little walls are, but we got it pretty good. My wife is sitting here with a hair dryer to expedite the drying process, and once this is dry we'll look at it and see if we need another coat or not. This one here that had the little potholes in it, it's going to need an extra coat because it was one of the roughest, well, the roughest piece on this, so it's going to need a little extra care up there, but other than that it's looking pretty good. Alright guys, so this is the result after it is all dried. I've done a little sample sanding here to see how it's going to take some sandpaper. We still have some cracks here, and we have some problem areas like right here. This filled this entire little ditch right here up. That's what I didn't want to happen, so I'm going to have to open that back up with Dremel. And also some areas, this lost a lot of definition because this right here is flat with epoxy, so if I painted that right now, what would happen is it would look like that this this little design emblem right here would be like this short. So we're going to have to sand a lot of this epoxy back in some of the deeper areas, and this area didn't get covered very well. You can still see the indentations of the layers, but this piece here with the holes, it did not fill the holes very well. It just kind of ran through it. So we're going to try a little trick to put maybe some tape over these holes really flat and smooth it down after we sand it a bit, and then we're going to try to put another coat of either clear coat or more of this on this piece. On the rest of it, it's stock removal. We need to remove some of this extra epoxy and some sanding on some rough areas, but I don't think we're going to put another coat of the epoxy on the entire shield, because what happened is it all just kind of ran down into these pockets, and we kept having to flip it out of these pockets and like try to put it back, and then some of it ran off the sides. It had like the viscosity of like honey, and it just wasn't thick enough to stay on the top of the dome of the shield here. It just would run off either side. So what I think we're going to do is just do some sanding, maybe work and doctor that corner up a little bit with tape, and then cover the tape with a little more epoxy just to seal it down there, and then we'll do some sanding and try to get some layering of coats of paint, because I think we can take care of this layer visibility here with a few coats of just regular spray paint, and we won't have to worry about dealing with the epoxy and all that again. It was pretty messy, as you can see, so have a big work area ready and a lot of cardboard or trash bags there. This is the next project. We got the Master Sword. That's for another video, but on to the next step. Okay, so I took the Dremel around the detail areas to reestablish the shapes and details of some places. And now I'm going to give it a quick blow off with some compressed air here, and we're going to see what we're going to do next. Probably a little bit of sanding and repairing these holes maybe with some Scotch tape, something really thin, and then maybe getting by with just some clear coat spray, because I don't think the epoxy is the answer for this project at this point. So we're going to try to do that and see what happens. Okay, so we're going to take our sander here and we're going to lightly sand it on the first setting here. It's got like a easy and then a little rougher and then the roughest setting for how violent it kind of goes there, but we're going to do some sanding on it and then maybe be ready to start laying on some layers of paint after we repair this with some tape after the sanding. Alright guys, so as you can see here, I've sanded the sides, roughed it up, got all the high spots sanded down a little better. It's going to require several coats of paint to hide or better hide some of these. I don't think it's going to be a problem with the looks of the shield at the end. You're just going to be able to see a little bit of texture in certain places, but that's okay. I'm not super picky about that. But and we have to put some tape here next, and then we're going to try to hit it with some layers of just regular blue, which is what the shield is colored most of, and we're going to see how one coat looks, put on another coat, probably do this 3 or 4 times to see how it's going to stack up and make the shield look. And then after the base coats are done and everything's looking smooth on it, we can go on to the decal painting and the painting the silver and everywhere that's metal and all the different colors, and we'll finish up with some several coats of gloss spray paint. Alright guys, so what we have here is some masking tape that I've put to cover any problem areas before I add the paint, and the idea here is to cover any place that the paint would not on its own. So after a couple layers of paint, the tape lines should not be visible. So we'll see how this works out. It's a little sketchy, but I'm pretty sure that it'll be okay, and if it isn't, then I'll just sand it down and try something else. So we're gonna make sure this is nice and clean and get some blue base coat put on. Alright guys, first coat is going to be the paint and the primer. I'm just using it as a primer. It shouldn't hurt anything, but it's the blue color right here that matches the shield color from the game. So we're going to put the first coat on here, 6 inches away, spray at an angle, try to start off the project so you don't get pooling. Okay guys, so this is the result after probably like 8 coats of this blue gloss paint. This doesn't have any kind of clear coat on it or anything yet, but I'm pretty happy with where it's at. And after the detail painting and all that, you're not going to be able to notice a lot of what I'm about to show you, but we do still have some visible lines where the sections got glued together, and also I was able to cover, like you guys remember the earlier footage, this was all tape. You can barely see anything there as far as tape. Tape was here. You can only see it if the glare hits it, it barely, like you're not going to be able to notice it very well once all the other stuff is on here and it's clear coated. But the worst part is here, and these two lines, when these two pieces were met up, it shifted a bit, I guess, while I had it clamped, and this piece went down a little deeper. But that's a pretty noticeable line when the light hits it, but when you look at it square on, you can't really see it. But it's not perfect. It's kind of a homemade replica type deal. I'm still deciding whether I'm going to do like a battle damage paint job or like a brand new looking paint job. But we're going to put the color on it now with the metal supports around the sides here, and then the red, the gold, and see how it looks after that. The back I haven't put anything on. I'm just going to paint that by hand afterwards using some brown and some silver just to kind of put a pretty good paint job on the back. But right now, as it is, without messing up the front, it looks like this. It hasn't been sanded or finished. This is a little handle that also printed with it. It was a separate print, but I'm not actually going to be using this. I'll be putting it up so I can still put it on there if I ever want to carry it. But this is going to be wall mounted, so I don't have any purpose for that big handle sticking out of the back. But for right now, let's get on with the next step of the painting. Alright guys, so we're painting the silver colors onto the shield now. My wife has been helping me out with the little tedious areas. She's a pretty good artist. By pretty good, I mean excellent. And I've just been spraying the paint from the spray can into a cup so we can hand paint it on there. That way there's not all that masking tape and all that stuff threatening to peel the paint back up. So we've done this, and parts of it need straightened up a little bit, and parts of it are going to need another coat, especially around the outer part of the shield here. And I might do like a dark wash on these areas, or take like a darker gray to highlight some of those details, because it's a lot of silver on this shield. Something to just kind of mix it up a little. Also in the middle of the bird there's going to be a blue dot like that's on the game, and it's red, and then the Triforce is yellow. So we'll keep you guys updated with when we move on to the next color, but this is what it looks like so far. Alright guys, so we're doing the red now. It's going to take probably 3 coats or so before it's really going to pop, but I'm just like grazing the surface here and trying not to get too much of the sides, and it seems to be working out. It's pretty easy to, paint it that way because you don't have to concentrate too much. But we opted to hand paint all the logos and the little features on the shield because it involves a lot less having to mask everything off. Okay guys, so here's where we're at so far. You can still see this is a little wet here, but it took about 4 coats of the red to get to this point of coverage, and it's going to take a lot more coats of the yellow, and also I'm going to have to clean up these lawns and match that blue the best I can. Also, I have to put a circle right here for the dark blue circle that's in the bird's chest area. And there's some touch-ups to do on the silver parts and some lines to clean up. So a few more coats on this. I'm letting this coat dry. I had to lay it on thick because, you know, putting light paint on top of something dark like this blue takes a lot of paint to cover it up all the way. So just a few little touch-ups and finishing up the Triforce up here, cleaning up some of the lines, and then we'll be ready for some clear coat. As you can see, the colored areas here and here and the silver are not gloss like the blue is. It will all look glossy once we cover it with the clear coat, a few coats of that. So we'll get back to you whenever we're doing the next step. Alright guys, so I've mixed up some dark gray silver. I used some of this sterling silver over here mixed with a little bit of black, and this is to accent the details with. It's kind of subtle, but I think it's going to work out for us to highlight these details. I didn't want something that's totally off color, just something that makes it pop a little bit. So I'm going to do this to this circle here, these details, and the circles in the top corners and the top detail. But we think we've got enough layers, enough coats of the colors now. We're going to straighten up these lines with some backup blue paint, and should be ready for some clear coat. This might need a couple coats too to show up a little bit better. We shall see. I thought about doing a wash, which is basically a paint that's mixed and watered down, and it runs into all the little deep parts and crevices and kind of shows all the detail. They use it a lot on miniature painting. But that wouldn't have worked out for painting the high spots like I'm doing here. So we'll see how it turns out after I maybe get another coat on it. Okay, so we got it where we want it. Put that little oval there on the bird, finishing touch. Straightened up the lines on the Triforce. So we're ready for some clear coat. So this is the last time that it won't be covered in clear coat. It'll probably take 2 or 3 coats for it to have that mirror finish that I like. Also hit these touch-ups, these details with some of this darker silver that I mixed up there. And it's pretty noticeable, but at the same time it's subtle. I didn't want to have some completely different color jumping out at us, but it just kind of highlights the details, makes it look like maybe a slightly different kind of metal. But anyways, on to clear coat. Alright, final step, we're going to put on some of this gloss clear enamel here, this clear coat, and probably 1 or 2 coats. Alright, so a few things to mention about this build. When I put the gloss enamel onto the shield, it reacted with the gloss that was already with the blue, and it caused this kind of leather effect that made the blue look like stretched leather, which I actually prefer that look over what it looked like before. It gives the shield more texture in my opinion. But this is as finished as I'm going to get this shield. It's got 2 layers of clear coat on the outside of it. A few problems kind of spring up. Anybody that's messed with spray paint knows that when you use spray paint outdoors, there's things that's going to keep flying into it unless that you've got it in an enclosed space. So I had to go through like picking out little gnats or dust particles and stuff the whole time and trying not to mess up the paint job while I was at it. And then there was also a few little areas that you can see here that look like little wrinkled areas, and those were actual bubbles that formed, like huge bubbles that I had to cut with scissors and then kind of deflate and smash the paint back down. I may go back over that to make it look more even, to be honest. And then there was one here, and one down here on the blue. And what's basically happening is all the different paints and layers of paints that we've used on this shield, they're reacting with one another, causing some adverse effects here. But this was a desirable effect, so I was happy about it. I'm happy it didn't do that same effect on the decals or logos on the acrylic paints. But I have a feeling that it is the glosses, the different glosses that reacted with one another. You can see the little subtle details here are darkened. I put another coat on that. But yeah, guys, this is the Hylian shield build. This is the finished product. Really appreciate you guys for sticking around and watching until the end. And if you guys are interested, the next project is going to be the Master Sword, and going to be a similar process, except probably no epoxy or resin on that one, just going to be sanding and painting. And we'll see if we can put a little clip on the end of the next video of mounting these on the wall together. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Okay, guys, so just a quick demo here of how large it is. I'm like 5'10", so you can see how big it is. It covers my entire torso. It's very similar to the size that it is on the actual game. Whew, almost dropped it. But very heavy, especially after the epoxy. The handle on the back is not really enough. You're going to need like an arm strap here that buttons down or something like that if you're going to actually wield this for like a cosplay or anything like that. But it's on the heavier side. Also, it's a thicker design. But there it is. Alright, guys, we got a little kitchen scale here. It's pretty accurate, so let's see how heavy this shield is. I don't want it to slide off. Let's get it centered here. Okay, so we're looking at about 5 pounds, 3/4, almost 6 pounds.
That's going to be heavy.
So it's a little on the heavy side for a 3D printed shield.